Have you ever felt a kind of tiredness that sleep can't touch? Like a soft weight pressing behind your ribs? A quiet fog that lingers even after a long weekend? A good meal? A night of laughter? You go through the motions, you smile at the right moments, you check every box. Yet, when the room finally falls silent, the heaviness returns, as if something inside you has been slowly leaking light. This isn't ordinary fatigue. It isn't just a busy calendar or a mind that's been thinking too hard. It's a deeper depletion. The kind that wears down your spirit until colors look less vivid and victories feel strangely hollow. We live in a culture that confuses speed with purpose. You're praised for being always on, for answering messages at midnight, for stacking goals like trophies on a shelf. The more you do, the more the world claps. But applause can't refill an empty core. Working harder at the wrong depth only digs the pit wider. Like a candle burning from both ends, you flare bright for a moment, then flicker, then dim. And because everyone around you is sprinting too, you start to believe that this ache is normal, that a life of constant chase is simply the price of being alive. Beneath that pace, another struggle hums. It isn't just your schedule that's draining you, it's the engine behind it, the endless push to reach something that moves every time you get close. You land the job and immediately raise the bar. You buy the thing and feel a twinge of boredom before the box hits the trash. You find love and your mind starts inventing new conditions for peace. Each arrival dissolves into the next pursuit. Relief keeps becoming a promise, not a place. Schopenhauer looked at that cycle without blinking. He suggested that what exhausts us isn't merely work, conflict, or circumstance, but the relentless current beneath them. The blind drive that keeps wanting alive long after comfort should have calmed it. In his view, we're not rational beings who occasionally desire. We're wanting beings who learned to rationalize. The result? A life spent, leaning forward, never arriving. You can call it ambition. You can call it progress. But if the inner tide never rests, the shore never feels like home. You can sense this in the small ways you've changed. Things that used to feel like sunrise now feel like fluorescent light. Conversations skim the surface. Even your own thoughts arrive pre-edited, optimized for efficiency, stripped of wonder. You postpone stillness because you fear what it might show you. You fill silence with podcasts, playlists, and noise that feels helpful, then wonder why your heart still whispers, something's missing. Imagine your inner world as a glass of water that's been constantly stirred. Every obligation, every comparison, every unspoken fear keeps the sediment swirling. Clarity doesn't come from pouring in more, it comes from letting the motion stop. But stopping feels dangerous when your identity is braided with movement. If you slow down, who are you? If you don't keep pushing, what keeps the roof from caving in? The mind insists that rest is risky. The body keeps score anyway. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, a chest that rarely fully expands. So the signals escalate. Joy becomes intermittent. Sleep restores the body, but not the brightness behind your eyes. Little tasks feel heavier than they should. Your patience shortens. Your appetite for beauty shrinks. And the future, once a canvas, starts to look like a list. You try the usual fixes, a new routine, a new purchase, a new destination. They help for a moment, the way sugar helps a crashing brain. Then the drop returns, lower than before. Look closely and you'll notice a quiet bargain you've been making. I'll feel okay when the inbox is cleared, when the promotion lands, when the number changes in the bank app, when the people you care about finally respond the way you hope. Every time the promise arrives, it immediately reschedules itself. The horizon line moves with your steps. You keep walking. The horizon keeps walking too. Here is the turn, the part most people avoid naming. What drains you might not be a personal failure or a curable quirk. It may be the structure of the chase itself. If your inner engine is tuned to constant acquiring, status, approval, sensation, then peace becomes a brief intermission between acts, not the ground beneath the stage. The rest you crave is not just time away, it's a different relationship with wanting. This is not a call to abandon your life, burn your plans, or reject every ambition. It's an invitation to see what your efforts have been feeding. Are you moving from fullness or from a hole that refuses to stay filled? Are you using achievement to quiet a hum that that only grows louder when the applause fades? If so, no calendar hack will mend what a different orientation must heal. Begin here. Stop outrunning silence. Turn toward it gently. Let the water settle long enough to see what's at the bottom. Notice the stories your mind repeats when nothing distracts it. The comparisons, the catastrophes, the private negotiations. Don't argue with them. Don't dress them up with motivational slogans. Just watch. The very act of observing starts to loosen their grip. Awareness is a solvent. It softens what force cannot. Then, reduce the friction that keeps your nervous system in a permanent sprint. Shorten the leash between stimulus and response. Fewer just in case checks of your phone. Fewer tabs open that pretend to be possibility but function as pressure. Give your attention back its edges. Let some things go unanswered long enough to learn they didn't need you. Spaciousness isn't laziness, it's oxygen. Reclaim small rituals that return you to the present without asking for payoff. Walking without earbuds, cooking slowly, breathing deep enough to feel the ribs widen. Let beauty be for its own sake again. Music that isn't productive. Sunlight you notice for no reason. A page you reread because a sentence felt true. These aren't escapism. They're repairs. They remind your system what unstirred water looks like. Most of all, question the reflex that equates worth with winning. If your value rises and falls with output, then rest will always feel like a moral failure, and joy will always arrive with conditions. You are not a project plan. You're a field that needs cycles, tilling, planting, growing, fallow. Productivity culture sells a year with no winter. Nature calls that drought. By now you may be thinking, if the engine behind my life is the problem, how do I change an engine while still driving? That's the honest tension. You have responsibilities. You can't vanish. The way forward isn't theatrical. It's incremental, turning the volume down on the inner push, one dial at a time, until you can hear something underneath it that isn't urging, measuring, demanding. Point made. You're not merely worn out. You're spiritually depleted by a mode of living that treats wanting as the only fuel and motion as the only proof. The first act of repair is not more effort. It's a different stance, less grasping, more presence, fewer bargains with the future, more trust in what steadies you now. In the next part, we'll name the deeper mechanism that keeps this exhaustion cycling, the swing between craving and emptiness, and how to step out of its rhythm without stepping out of your life. There's a strange rhythm to the exhaustion you've been carrying, a swing between craving and flatness, like a pendulum that never rests in the center. At first, desire feels like momentum. You see the next thing you want, and your whole system lights up. The vision is vivid. The future feels like a promise. You imagine the relief, the joy, the satisfaction you'll feel when you get there. This anticipation can be intoxicating. It pulls you forward with a rush of purpose. But here's the quiet truth you might already know. The moment you arrive, the high begins to leak away. The thing you thought would feel like sunlight feels more like a warm lamp. You enjoy it, you try to hold it, but within days or hours, the glow dulls. The pendulum swings back, and you're left with a hollow that demands to be filled again. The cycle repeats: spark, pursuit, arrival, fade, emptiness. Over and over until you can't tell if you're chasing the goal or just chasing the chase. Schopenhauer recognized this as the essence of the human condition. Not a flaw unique to you, but a universal current. We are creatures wired to seek, and when one desire is met, the next lines up without missing a beat. This is why the satisfaction never sticks. It was never meant to. In his philosophy, the will to live isn't just the instinct to survive. It's the constant propulsion of wanting, a blind and ceaseless engine. The tragedy is that the more aware you become of this, the more you feel the weight of its futility. Think of your life as a long staircase where each step promises a view, but at the top of every set, you find another climb waiting. You've been ascending for years, knees aching, lungs burning, all for a horizon that slides away as you approach. Sometimes you pause, look back at the distance you've covered, and feel a flicker of pride. But pride doesn't cool the fatigue. And when you turn forward again, the climb resumes, indifferent to your need for rest. This is not to say that goals are meaningless or that effort is futile. It's to see clearly that no external finish line can deliver the permanent peace your spirit aches for. Even the most beautiful victories are temporary shelters. The relief is real, but it has an expiration date. If you expect it to last forever, you will always feel cheated when the clock runs out. The more you chase, the more you start to outsource your sense of enough to something that hasn't happened yet. Your life becomes a series of negotiations with the future. I'll feel content when... This posture robs the present of its weight. You become a guest in your own days, always half absent, your attention fixed on a promise that keeps rescheduling itself. It's easy to think the answer is to slow the pendulum, to want less, to expect less. But the truth is subtler. You don't have to amputate desire. You have to change your relationship to it. Desire can be a signal, not a dictator. It can point you toward movement without convincing you that movement is the only form of living. This begins with noticing the moment the pendulum swings, not after you've fallen into the next chase, but right as the first craving sparks. Pause there. Instead of lunging, get curious. What's really underneath this urge? Is it hunger for experience? Or is it an attempt to escape a quiet discomfort? Often, the rush toward the next thing is less about joy and more about avoiding the stillness where your mind might speak truths you'd rather not hear. By catching the cycle in its first seconds, you can start to soften its grip. You can choose to savor anticipation without letting it harden into necessity. You can enjoy the taste of a goal without demanding that it feed you forever. This is how you step off the endless staircase, not by refusing to walk, but by realizing you're already standing somewhere that matters. And here's the paradox. When you stop leaning so hard on the future to deliver your worth, the present begins to feel more alive. The colors return. Small pleasures regain their depth. The air feels different when you're not using it merely to get somewhere else. You start to notice that peace isn't hiding at the next milestone. It's waiting here, in the moments you've been rushing past. Point made. Spiritual exhaustion thrives in the space between endless craving and inevitable disappointment. The way out is not to kill desire, but to loosen its authority, to reclaim the present as more than a waiting room for the next high. In the next part, we'll explore how to rebuild your inner life so that it's not dependent on the pendulum's swing, how to create a baseline of contentment that remains steady no matter where the pendulum happens to be. If the pendulum of craving and disappointment is what drains you, then building a stable ground beneath it is what restores you. Imagine a harbor where the tide still rises and falls, but the dock remains unmoved. This is what a strong inner baseline feels like, a calm that doesn't disappear when life's waters swell or recede. The first step toward that baseline is reclaiming the way you use your attention. Right now, your mind may feel like a busy train station, with thoughts rushing in and out, each demanding you board and follow it to some distant destination. Most of these trains are headed toward what's next or what went wrong. Schopenhauer would say this constant departure is exactly why your spirit never rests. You're always traveling, never arriving. To change that, you have to learn how to simply stand on the platform, letting the trains pass without chasing everyone. This doesn't mean shutting down desire or rejecting the future. It means anchoring yourself so deeply in the present that you can welcome the future without being pulled off balance by it. This is where practices like reflection, solitude, and mindful presence are not luxuries, but lifelines. 10 minutes spent fully noticing the details around you, the pattern of light on the wall, the sound of your own breath, can begin to stitch torn edges in your spirit. But presence alone isn't enough. You also need to reshape the environment that feeds your exhaustion. Consider how much of your daily input is noise disguised as urgency. Constant notifications, endless feeds, conversations that leave you more tense than before. Every piece of noise demands a tiny piece of your energy, and over time, those fragments add up to a serious deficit. To protect your baseline, you must become a fierce guardian of your mental space. This might mean pruning your digital life, saying no to obligations that are fueled by guilt rather than genuine commitment, or even stepping away from relationships that operate as one-way drains. There is a courage in this, because you will feel the fear of missing out, the anxiety of not meeting every expectation. But the more you practice, the more you realize that every no to noise is a yes to something vital. You are not here to be endlessly available to the world. You are here to be available to your own life. Another key to restoring your inner baseline is redefining success in a way that isn't tied to perpetual striving. In our culture, worth is too often measured in achievements, invisible proof of progress. But this definition leaves you permanently unsatisfied, because every achievement immediately hands the microphone to the next demand. What if, instead, success was measured by how aligned your actions feel with your values, by how much time you spend in genuine connection or deep engagement with something that matters to you? This reframing turns daily life from a race into a practice. It's also essential to recognize that spiritual restoration is not a one-time event. You don't fix exhaustion and then move on forever. Like tending a garden, it's an ongoing relationship. Some days will still feel heavy, some moments will still pull you toward the old pendulum swing. The difference is that now you have a home to return to, a baseline that reminds you who you are beyond the chase. And here lies the quiet gift of all this work. When your baseline is steady, you can engage with desire without being devoured by it. You can pursue goals without pinning your entire identity to their outcome. You can experience disappointment without collapsing into despair. You become less like a pendulum and more like a mountain, still feeling the weather, but never losing your ground. Point made. Spiritual renewal begins not by eliminating the tides of life, but by building the inner dock that can hold steady through them. In the next part, we'll look at how this stability transforms the way you relate to others, to challenges, and to your own reflection in the mirror. Because a restored spirit doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you live. When your spirit is drained, it doesn't just affect the way you feel inside, it seeps into the way you speak, the way you stand, the way you meet the world's gaze. Fatigue in the body can be masked for a while. You can force a smile, push through the motions, keep up appearances. But spiritual exhaustion is harder to disguise. It has a way of dimming your presence, like a candle flickering behind frosted glass. You may notice it in the smallest interactions. The friend's story you can't fully follow because your mind is somewhere else. The half-hearted "I'm fine" when someone asks how you are. The growing reluctance to answer calls or messages, because even kindness feels like another demand. Over time, this quiet withdrawal starts to reshape your life. Without realizing it, you begin building walls, thin at first, then thicker, between yourself and the people you care about. The tragedy is that many will misinterpret this. They might think you've grown cold, distant, or uninterested, but the truth is far simpler. You're empty. You've been pouring from a well that hasn't been refilled in years, and there's barely a trickle left. Even love feels heavy when you have nothing to anchor it to. This is why restoring your inner baseline matters, not just for your own peace, but for the relationships that depend on your presence. When your spirit is steady, you can give without fear of depletion, because you're no longer giving from your last reserves. You're sharing from overflow, from the quiet strength that comes from being grounded. Conversations stop feeling like chores. Connection stops feeling like another item on a list. Instead, you rediscover what it's like to actually be with someone, not just beside them. And this stability also changes how you face challenges. In the old cycle, every setback felt catastrophic because it threatened the little energy you had left. Now, difficulties become weather passing over a mountain. You still feel the storm, but you know it won't move the ground beneath you. You stop living in crisis mode. The spikes and drops of life don't send you scrambling for escape, because you've learned that calm is not something the world grants you. It's something you cultivate. Perhaps most importantly, a restored spirit changes the way you see yourself. In exhaustion, the mirror reflects only a version of you defined by struggle, a person constantly trying to get back to how they used to be. But with renewal, the mirror becomes a window. You start to see not just who you were, but who you're becoming. You see strength that wasn't there before, boundaries that once felt impossible, and a patience that turns even long waits into quiet, fertile time. Schopenhauer might have called this the soft rebellion against the will. The decision to no longer be ruled entirely by craving. You haven't escaped desire. You've simply stopped worshipping it. You still move toward what matters, but you do so with both feet planted firmly in the present. You no longer treat the future as the sole owner of your joy. So if you find yourself in the thick fog of spiritual exhaustion, understand this. The way out isn't through a single grand act of willpower. It's through the steady, daily practice of building a home within yourself, a place you can return to when the noise gets loud and the demands grow heavy. Protect that home. Tend to it. Make it so rich and welcoming that you never again have to fear the pendulum's swing. Final point, life will always have tides and the world will always have its demands. But when you anchor your spirit, you no longer live at the mercy of either. You meet joy without clinging. You meet pain without breaking. And you meet yourself, not as a stranger in need of fixing, but as someone who has finally come home.